Hey, Wire Monkeys, welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Cabling. This episode, we're talking 5 common issues with copper certification. Let me ask you a question. What is Softings' view? Let's say I've got a consolidation point. I've got a patch panel in the horizontal cross connect. It lands on a patch panel in the consolidation point. They're patching that to another patch panel in the consolidation point, and that goes to the telecommunications outlet at the work area outlet. What is Softings' point of view for as far as testing it? Do you segment test it, or do you test it through the consolidation point?
So we don't have to have an opinion on that because we just lean on the standard. So if the consolidation point is part of that link definition, which it is in permanent link and it is in channel, you're going to test to that link definition. So essentially, you're not going to test a segment of that. You're going to test the entire channel or the entire permanent link. And if it meets the standards, it meets the standards. So I'm not dodging the answer here.
No, you're not. You're not answering. You're not dodging at all. And that's what I said, because I know that sometimes I know what the standards say, but I do know that sometimes testing manufacturers and sometimes manufacturers will require a step above what the standards require. And that's kind of where I was heading with that. So what you're saying is, if you test it by the standards, then Softing is good with that test.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess the last part of this little segment here would be the third limit, which is now really popular, which is the MPTL limit, also called direct attach. Okay. Right. So you got, again, channel is or permanent link. Let's start with permanent link. That's the classic and, as we said, preferred right now, I guess, to channel, right? So there's those two. And then the third, which is the new wrinkle, and it's probably the hottest topic right now in structured cable copper testing that's out there right now, is MPTL, or direct attach. Okay. So instead of going to like a typical work outlet, which would be to a PC or a phone or some other device, typically at knee level, right, or so in the wall, MPTL is designed to go to specifically in the ceiling applications. And what's in the ceiling? Wireless access points and cameras. Okay. Also PoE lighting, but the majority of it right now is wireless access.
You also got building automation, industrial sensors. All of those are MPTLs. So it's not just the typical WAPs. And that's one of the fights that I fight all the time. Is yes, a wireless access point done that way is an MPTL. But there are other types of MPTLs.
Fair enough. When you choose that limit, that third limit, channel, permanent link, MPTL, that requires slightly different testing. So there's a different limit that you choose in the tester. Again, on the tester screen, it's not going to say channel. It's not going to say permanent link. It's going to say MPTL. You need to choose that. There's some specific test scenarios around that. In other words, you need to choose the correct testing hardware. There's typically a patch cord adapter at the direct attach side, and on the other side, it's going to be a permanent link adapter. So identify your test limit, your link definition, set up your tester accordingly, and then make sure that it says that on the screen, because that's what's going to be on the report, and that's what's important.
And if it's in the contract, you better have it right, because you ain't getting paid if it's in the contract. If it's in the contract that you're going to do a MPTL test, and here's what happened, because a lot of people don't know the MPTL stuff, where you put a permanent link adapter on one side and a patch cord adapter on the other side, and the patch cord adapter has to match the category rating of the cable too.
Yes, so it's category specific. But unlike the other test, channel, permanent link, they're category specific, but the connecting hardware is not category specific. They're basically backwards compatible. So I get a 6A permanent link or a 6A channel, and I can just change in the tester to category 6 or even category 5E.
Right.
But direct attach is specific connecting hardware for that category. Yes.
So just make sure that I understand this. I mean, I think I already do, but so if I've got a category 6A cable going to a wireless access point. That's got to be a category 6A patch cord
That's
adapter.
correct.
I got an industrial sensor that's run over Cat 5e. That has to be a Cat 5e patch cord adapter because that 6A patch cord adapter is not backwards compatible.
That's correct.
That's what I want to make sure I understood. Because it's funny, I just had somebody ask me that question today, and I was teaching a class today, and they asked me that question. That's exactly what I told them. I was like, I couldn't say 100% positive that was the case, but I was pretty sure that the patch cord adapters were not backwards compatible, where the testers are backwards.
That's correct. That's correct.
But anyway, getting back to my point, I'm chasing rabbits again. So when MPTLs first came out, technicians, one thing I will say about technicians, they think outside the box. They will find ways to do stuff and get stuff done. And
so will project managers. So will.
So sometimes they hit it out of the park, and other times, it's a failed bunt, and they get run down for first base. Right? Yeah. So what happens is when somebody hasn't been trained to how to test an MPTL, they're gonna go grab a channel adapter and throw it on the end. And the reason you're using a patch cord adapter is because where that measurement actually starts. So the permanent link adapter, the measurement starts in front of that mod end connector. The patch cord adapter, not patch cord adapter, but the channel adapter, the measurement starts after the mod end connector. So the thing that you crimped on, the thing that's most likely messed up, if you use a channel adapter, you're not measuring the thing that's most likely.
What you're getting at there is the test plane when those measurements start happening in that cable measurement. And yes, there's different test planes for these things. And I'll just say this, like when we relay this information to technician, project managers, various people, they're always like, "Oh, this is so complicated, and why can't you just make all these things test the same way and stuff like that?" And it's not the it's not us, it's not the other cable tester manufacturers. We're not in like a group trying to make things difficult for people. It is a reality of the standards. In other words, if you want these standards to be accurately measured and also essentially easy to measure for category 6, 6A, 5E, and stuff like that. That's just the reality of what it takes to be able to get these accurate measurements together.
It is. So over the last 13 years, I've probably taught 24,000 people. Just going by my numbers, 3 classes a week, every other week, 13 years. My average class fill, student size. I can easily say, yep, my number's probably higher, but I know what my average rate is on a class for as far as filling it. And I hear that more often than I like to hear, because technicians feel that the standards and the best practices are written by a bunch of people who are just, because they ain't got nothing else better to do, so they got to come up with a new process to justify their being.
Oh,
and that's not.
I agree, and you may have just segued into our next choice here, our next item on the list.
And now a message from our sponsor.
Big or small, local or nationwide, Fortress Telecom is your go-to partner for all your connectivity needs. With our expertise in low-voltage cabling, bidirectional Tier 2 fiber certification, copper certification up to Cat 8, and Wi-Fi site surveys using Ekahau Sidekick, there's no project too challenging for us. Count on Fortress Telecom to deliver top-notch solutions tailored to your business, wherever you are across the nation. Visit fortresstelecom.com or call us today to start your seamless connectivity journey. Fortress Telecom. We are secure IT. Let's get back to the show.
Oh, yes. Yes. So, there are certain topics that if I want to get traction on a social media post, there are certain topics that I know if I put it out there, it's just going to generate traffic. It just will. Like union versus non-union. Sure. Always guaranteed to generate traffic.
I can think of a few others, but yeah.
Tie wraps. Yeah. Tie wraps versus Velcro. There's another one, right? There's a few of them. Snips or scissors. There's another one.
Good one.
Right? Another, but one that I just don't understand. The other issues, I understand both people's points of view. I do, because I've been in union, I've been non-union,
Mm-hmm.
and I've heard people call stiff scissors, whatever. I understand the difference between Velcro and tie wraps, and how you can technically use both according to the standard. A lot of people don't realize that, but it is what it is. But one of the ones I don't understand is, and you see this in a lot of the social media communities, to certify or not to certify.
Yeah.
And my point of view is, and then I'll let you tell me how Softing or how Tom feels about this. I feel that if you have the ability, now again, there's sometimes you don't always have access to a certifier,
Yep.
so I get that. But if you have the ability, you should certify every cable that you install. It's like a birth record. Now, whether or not you sell that certification record to the customer is a different discussion. Because in my mind, what that does, and I've had enough customers that have done this to me, well, they'll come back and say, well, that cable's still not working, and it hasn't worked since the day that you've installed it. Well, if I tested it with a qualifier, I can't even say a qualifier, but if I test it with a verifier, I don't really have a physical document that says, look, here's the electrical properties of the cable on this date, this time, and it's been calibrated and all that other stuff. So I feel that if you have the ability, you should certify every cable because it's a birth record. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think that there's more complexity to it there, and
Okay.
so I also don't want to sound like I'm insensitive to people basically arguing a value proposition to certification testing. So the arguments that you're talking about are saying, oh, this is overpriced, it's too expensive, it's too time consuming for all this kind of stuff. And I mean, it takes more time to certify cables. It costs more money to own a certification tester. Okay. These are devices that you have to have calibrated yearly, that kind of thing.
Right.
But let's go back. Why would somebody, let's put yourself in the shoes of a stakeholder in that network. Okay. Somebody who's going to work at that office in the IT, or let's just say that they're going to do anything at that office involving technology, which is anything nowadays. Everybody's a beneficiary of our technology that we're testing.
Right.
But what is the payoff for them having certified cable? When you certify a cable, you're testing that cable to an extremely high degree of performance, especially when you compare that to a simple wire mapper, right? So if the argument that you're saying is, I don't want to certify, I think I should just wire map, I don't believe in that. That's not, and again, I was talking about a wire mapper earlier on this same podcast, right? So,
but you're talking about as one step of a
that's
two-step
right, one
process
step of a two-step process. But to say that you're just going to wire map in place of certification testing, no. What a certification tester does is it tests that cable's capability of its data carrying and PoE carrying capabilities, not just for that instance, but to a standard that's high enough to say that cable manufacturers have confidence in it for decades, decades of use. That's a pretty strong reality that is in cabling. Okay. You're not just making, you're not wiring up your own home network for and you're also passing off this information. You're building this structured cabling system in a repeatable, professional manner that other professionals or other users can walk into, easily identify and understand its performance levels. There's a ton of value in that. Your office could pack up and move to another place, and another tenant could come in, take over that cabling, and use it for years with certification cable.
I was going to add 2 points, and that was kind of the tail end of the second point there. So, one of the reasons I'd want to certify it is, and what I hear quite often is, well, the customer doesn't want that. The customer doesn't want to pay for that. Okay, so then you don't sell them the certification test results. It's insurance for you then at that point. But then you got to ask yourself, is that really the kind of customer that I want?
That's right. So we've got a couple different in this space, as contractors, as technology providers, things like that. We've got a couple different burdens. We need to do the jobs right. We need to be able
Right.
to execute properly. It's also important for us to be able to relay the value of what we're doing to the people who are buying this. So like if you're quoting a certification job and that looks identical to a job where you're just doing wire map testing, then shame on you. It needs to say
Right.
specifically, and you need to have your guarantee for this work. In other words, you've put more effort into this, you're going to charge more, but there's going to be a heck of a lot more detail to this, confidence in what
Right.
you're doing, and expectation of success because of the level of testing that's gone on as opposed to just a simple wire map.
Most of the people who are in those communities talk about I think their real goal is to be the best or a premium
Sure.
contractor. And to be a premium contractor, you have to use premium tools and have premium business practices and premium processes within the company, and that will attract premium customers. And there's also the flip side of that like you kind of already hit on it. But I've always heard it addressed as educating the customer. A customer may say, I don't want that because they think it's cost, but it gives them the insurance because, like you said, people don't realize cable, even though they say the average lifespan is 7 to 10 years, there's some cable out there that's 30, 40, 50 years old because it's been used for, it's only being used for an analog phone.
You're going down
right?
Look, when you say that cabling is good for 20 years, which is the reality for certified cable, manufacturers will guarantee it for 20 years. Think about what has happened in 20 years in the technology that we're dealing with.
Exactly.
Wow, there's so much out there.
Exactly.
You have the advent of PoE. Exactly. You have bandwidth that has gone. We went from 10 meg to 10 gig, even beyond that with some of the cabling, right?
Yeah, fault managed power systems. You don't know what's going to be put on that cable down the road. That's my point.
And that is all the more reason for certification testing, because you don't know what's going to happen. Neither does anybody else. And certification testing shows some defined values there to the cabling being performed, in which the future is guaranteed to go one direction, and that is up, 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 right?
Yes. And at least I say all the time, our industry changes at the speed of light, and it's true. I mean, it's absolutely true.
Now, so if the argument, you went back to kind of these kind of argument makers in our space, if their argument is certification testing versus wire map testing, I just gave you my 2 cents there. I think that that's not an argument. Okay.
Right.
If you have a middle proposition for let's say qualification testing, and also clearly defining what it is and what it isn't for your customer, then I think that there could be space for that, and there is space for it, and it does make sense in many scenarios.
But I think as a business owner or somebody starting a contractor, a low voltage contractor, they should have at minimum a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. And if in those plans is they want to become an Acme certified cable installer, you better find out what's the parameters by Acme Manufacturing Company to find out what they want tested by. Because if you go out and spend, even though a qualifier is cheaper than a certifier, it's still not cheap. I mean, if I was to buy a qualifier, it would take a chunk of change out of my checkbook.
That's right.
So if I know that that's part of my 5-year plan, I'm not going to want to buy 2 testers in the 5-year plan. No. I'm just going to say, okay, I'll get the Softing Cable Master 210, which, by the way, it's not on Amazon. I already looked. It's not on Amazon.
We try not to do the Amazon thing.
I get that. So I'll have to reach out to one of my distributors and get it. But not totally forgot where I was going with that. See, I was chasing that rabbit, and I got.
Well, the 210 would be our verifier, right? The qualifier that we have would be our NetExpert XG2. Okay, and there's some special things about that. So that.
And what's that run?
So that tool a single unit license for just 1 gig would be around $3,000, roughly MSRP.
Okay. And then your certifier is probably going to be what? 10 grand, 9 grand, 8 grand?
Definitely less than 10
11
grand.
grand?
For copper only, we sell 500 megahertz license limited certifier for around $7,000 a certifier, right? So
that kind of feeds the point I was
mhm,
just making, right? If I'm an entrepreneur and I've got my low voltage business and I have slated as my 5-year plan that I want to become an Acme manufacturer certified
yep,
installer, and Acme requires a
mhm,
certifier, it may cost me a little bit more money
yes,
now, but I'm going to get it
yes,
now, and that makes that, because some customers, when they see that you're doing premium products, premium
mhm.
services, they will pay extra for that, and there are customers out there
Yeah,
that will do
and
that.
as a technician also, or as a provider, there's trade-offs between the tools too. So a certification tester,
Yes.
let's take our I guess budget-minded certification tester, which is our Wire Expert 500, comes in at about $7,000. It just does copper certification. That's all it does, right? But that's a big deal. That is a premium that you can be charging for, right? When you go over to our
Right.
qualifier, which does the BERT testing, right? Bit error rate testing. It does this
Yep.
BERT testing, 1 gig. You can license it up even all the way up to 10 gig. But it also does PoE testing. It does active network testing. It has reporting capabilities in there. So there's a ton of other value built into that tester to perform other functions. And it really provides users of this test equipment, contractors, whoever they may be, with options about how they want to go about their business, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
a certification test is a great way to do it. We're talking about it today. You
Right.
should definitely clearly enunciate what it is for them, for your users, so they understand the value in certification testing. But you could also do BERT testing, qualification testing, and use that solution
Hmm.
to be able to provide basically a different type of test report. Those test reports are easy to understand, that kind of thing, and there's perhaps a different amount that you charge for that service based upon that tool.
Another thing that we run into is you get into the whole administration standard and labeling and
Hmm.
stuff. And I always say the customers fall in one of about 5 categories when it comes to
Hmm.
labeling. Either they don't care what it's labeled, or they want it labeled
Hmm.
sequentially, drop 1, drop 2, drop 3, or by room
Hmm.
numbers. I've never understood the whole room number
Hmm.
thing. Or they come up with some weird labeling scheme themselves, right? So what is the impact if somebody uses the wrong labeling scheme in their test?
It depends on what certifier you have. I mean, let's say the we've already talked about this as a, I guess, ramification of doing it wrong. You could, depending on the certifier that you're using, have to go back to the job site, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants to do the testing over. That could be like the limitation of your certifier, okay? But it
Mhm.
also could be because because your labeling scheme is so far off, you're not able to make heads or tails of what the labels actually should be. And so you may have to go back to the job site just to make sense of it, to make it correct, okay? So either of those things, the two things, are probably worst case scenario that I can think of. Maybe you can think of another, but that's what
Mhm.
I'm saying. So um, for what we suggest here is, again, in the tool, identifying, having first off, you need to have a plan before you ever go to the
Right.
job. Okay, you've talked about it
Yep.
many times on your podcast. There's others who talk
Yep.
about it. It's important understanding what you're going to do on a project and having a thought process and a say labeling scheme, okay, prior to showing up, is
Mhm.
important. Project managers can help kind of identify this. And depending upon the capability of your tool, your certification tool, that tool can help you realize the scheme to minimize and optimize your test time and your project time and all that kind of stuff. So
Right.
let me show you what we're talking about with our tool, right? So again, I'm going to pull
Mhm.
up our Wire Expert tester here. This is our Wire Expert tester. You can see in the project settings, okay, I can simply click into the project settings, and you can see I've got a job site. You can see the last show that I was at, Okay, there's a project for me. This is my
Mhm.
tester that I get to drag around everywhere. I can just go into the site, and you can see there's all kinds of sites. And I can just click on a individual site. So let's go to this. Let's go to this one. Let's not give anybody. And you can see that within that site, there is a label. You can see that panel F port 36. I've also got
Mhm.
multiple label sources I can choose. So within the Softing tester, we have 5 different labeling schemes that can be chosen. Some of those are what you mentioned earlier, the TIA 606 labeling scheme. So you can actually choose
Mhm.
that and work within that template. You can work with none, which I don't well, maybe, I mean, I don't want to say that none is never a choice. You may just have like a one-off test, or you may have forgotten a drop, or you need to go in and do like one or
Mhm.
two more. Then none is totally realistic in there because there's no setup time for none. You just go in and do the test and you redo it. You can use freeform, which is like from point to point. There's also list-based testing. So that option is really interesting. You can actually build out the labels in Excel or in the reporting software prior to going to the job site and load it on the tester prior to going to job site. Like if you're a project manager, I'm gonna say this clearly, right, for everybody to understand. If you're a project manager who gets irritated because the dots are in the not or not in the right place, or there's dashes where there shouldn't be dashes, or there's lowercase letters, list-based testing can solve that for you. Because you're
Right.
going to build out those labels. Every character, you're building them out and loading them on the tester. And the technician, all they have to do is choose the right one. They don't have to write anything in. Okay.
Are you guys partnering with Brother so where you can where they can the printing of the labels can be coordinated with the test
Yeah,
results?
we are. So our testers use. We're not proprietary on the labeling schemes and stuff like that. We use simple CSV, comma separated values, and without getting nerdy on
Right.
what's going on, it's basically a generic way of passing information from device to device. And so does Brother uses that as well. And kudos to them for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't say we're partnering with it. We basically allow them, we take the same information that they do. So I can take a simple Excel file, they can load it in their physical labeler. We can take that same Excel file, load it into our reporting software, and eventually into our testers and go to site and be on the same page. So it's that simple. The last labeling scheme that we have is simple cable label, which kind of uses like a predictive text. So I can just show that real quick. Here's simple cable label. I can go in and choose something. Let's just choose something a little more complicated here. So rather than A1, so let's go in and say Chuck's Chuck's TR. Let's go back. And I know I'm already upsetting all of the project managers out there because I'm not uppercase. So let's make that correction real quick. Chuck's TR. And I'm going to say space port check. So now it says Chuck's TR port 1, okay? And I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
write in the word Chuck's, the word or the letters TR or the word port ever again. It will automatically go to that number 1 and then increment to number 2, number 3, number 4, and I'm done with that, right? You can see that it's got the next label there, right? When I do the test, it'll put that information in. And because I don't have autosaves on my tester, I can actually edit that on the fly. So let's say that for some reason port number 5 is not used, okay? If it says port 5 is up next, I can just overwrite that, go on to number 6, and the tester will automatically increment to number 7 for me. So it basically knows what's going on there. Super handy and a huge time saver.
Hey everyone, we're taking a quick break to talk about an essential resource for anyone interested in the vast world of physical security. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, you'll want to tune into Security Today. Hosted by Bear, this podcast dives deep into everything security related, from insightful articles and thought-provoking philosophies to the latest trending topics in the industry. Every episode of Security Today is packed with information that's crucial for staying informed and ahead in the field. Join Bear as he explores complex topics with ease, making even the most intricate security concepts accessible to everyone. Follow the journey on Instagram and Twitter at UncleBear_ and at Security Today Podcast. Now let's dive back into our episode.
Very cool. So let's talk about wrong category limits. You had that down in the show notes for us to talk about.
Yeah. So kind of the same thing here. Category 6 versus 5E versus 6A, right?
The technicians always put in the right. They always select the right kind of cable, so I don't understand the problem.
So again, there's multiple layers to this problem. You know, you may be look, the problem here, the mistake, I should say, the mistake can be one that is an honest mistake. It can be one that is, let's say, less than honest mistake. Someone could, you know, in other words, I have a project that calls for 6A, and I'm having trouble with things passing. Well, I'll just drop that tester down to category 6, and all of a sudden I've got so many passes. It's an easy job, right? Okay, so that happens.
And that's why customers should really look at the test results. I mean, evaluate the test results.
There's multiple things going on here. It could be a mistake by the technicians. It could be a misunderstanding. The project manager could have made the mistake and told them the wrong thing to do. There's so many ways that things go on. Regardless of what's happening, let me say this: having a view of the category that you're testing with both technicians provides accountability and two brains thinking about this issue.
Two sets of eyes is better than
That's
one
right.
set
Do
of
the
eyes.
math. 4 eyes, 2 brains, 4 hands.
The guy in the guy in the telecom room might not have had his triple latte frappuccino grande with a Red Bull
That's right.
shot yet.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
It happened. It happened.
So when this happens, and this is a common one, right? I'm going to say this: avoiding the problem before it ever happens is really the best. And you can say that about several things we talked about today. Avoiding the problem or the mistake before it happens is really the best plan of action. And you should choose a workflow, a project plan, and a test tool that helps you do that in any scenario that you can imagine, right? That is really the optimal way, right? If you do make that mistake, let's say that you've done everything right. You followed the instructions given to you by the project manager. Let's say the project manager was given instructions and he did what he was told. And you go and you test the cable and you get back to the office. A week later, somebody calls and he says, "Oh, this is supposed to be a category 6A job site, not a category 6 job site." One of the things that we have on our tester is in the reporting software, you can actually recertify that test result. So think about this.
No additional travel back to the job site.
No additional travel
to retest.
Our tester tests a 500 megahertz sweep every single time, regardless of whether it's testing category 5E, 6, and 6A. Remember, 5E is only 100 megahertz. 6 is 250 megahertz. 6A is 500 megahertz. We take a 500 megahertz sweep of that cable every single time. And so even though the test was completed weeks ago, you can simply pull up that test result, choose to recertify to the new category, and it will reapply that limit. Now, it's not guaranteeing a pass or a fail, okay? It's taking
Right.
the
No,
existing
it's
performance.
evaluating the data against the new
That's right.
standard.
That's right. And that's a huge help.
Yep,
But
yep.
that's a
Yeah.
very common issue that we hear. And
Oh, absolutely.
we when our users call us with that, sometimes we have the benefit of being able to look, we got a simple solution for you. Try this, and they're very happy. Sometimes they're not aware that they can do it, and they don't call us, and they go back and retest anyway, and then we have to give them essentially the bad news there that they missed out on that opportunity. But understanding what's going on and avoiding that problem from the onset is really the best way to deal with that issue.
I can tell you right now, as a project manager, if I had a 500 cable job that they accidentally set it at Cat 6 instead of Cat 6A, I would much rather go back and retest 5 cables that failed because I've gone through and reapplied the standards to them in your tester, as opposed to having to go back and retest 500.
Oh yeah,
Just
not
saying.
not even close. Yes, totally agree.
And I've said this before on many previous episodes of the podcast. Your company should have a corporate test plan. The test plan should include the maintenance of the testers, who's responsible for that, who's responsible for getting them calibrated, making sure that they're monitoring the calibration dates, training on the testers when new people come in, and tracking the testers, and what to do with all those test results. I mean, that's I could do a whole show just on training plan if I wanted to. Maybe I should do that. And because that way you create that consistency, so no matter if it's technician A or technician B, the expectation is the same. You don't have, like you said, one person labeling the TRs with lowercase, another person doing with uppercase, and they have that's not uniform. It's not uniform, So I get that. Tom, what a great show, man! I appreciate you taking time and coming on today to challenge these. We exceeded our expectations. We said 5.
Yeah.
Of course, Softing again.
I don't know. What did we do there? Like 7? Honestly,
7.
I told you, I've got
actually, we did more than 7 because I threw questions at you. So we did more than 7.
I could keep going. It's fun. And it's this topic is when you talk to people who have to live and work with this issue and wrestle with it, it becomes one that you enjoy, because you can help navigate them and save time, save money, help them be better at their job, help organizations succeed. It's a fun topic for us. It really is.
Let me ask you one final question. Actually, I guess technically be 8. Is Cat 8 on your radar?
Cat 8 is well, it is. I mean, our tester can test Cat 8. It actually exceeds Cat 8 frequency.
Because you said it swept up to 500. I just took that to meant that was all it swept up to. So you're saying your tester is a 2 gig megahertz?
Our tester, even the 500 megahertz. So I'll explain this. Softing's pretty cool. We build stuff. We kind of overbuild things at times. Okay. So all of our Wire Expert certifiers can test cable actually up to Cat 8 is 2000 megahertz. All of our certification testers can test up to 2400 megahertz, well in excess of Cat 8 requirements. Okay. But we build a license limitation into the inexpensive Wire Expert to only test up to 500 megahertz. So if your user wanted to test Cat 8, and there's not a lot of it out there, we know it hasn't been as popular, I guess, as some people kind of prognosticated it to be, right? But if your user wanted to test Cat 8 and they bought the simple Wire Expert 500, they can just buy a license upgrade and plug that into the tester, and that hardware will test the 2000 megahertz category 8 limits.
Yeah, I think the only Cat 8 questions I typically get are from people like on Reddit, who they're running some cable for their home network, and I want to use Cat 8 because it's the best.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you running Cat 8? Why? No. Cat 6 is perfectly fine for your house. Cat 6 is.
Yes, it is.
So.
That's it for this episode of today's podcast. We hope you were able to learn something. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Also, leave a rating so we can help even more people learn about telecommunications. Until next time, be safe.